All right, let's welcome back our favorite guest here at the Realty Podcast, Montgomery County Treasurer John McManus.
Hello, everyone. Hello, viewers.
We are so glad to have you back. You
Thank
were
you.
one of our favorite guests. You were one of our best performing guests for all of our podcasts and clips that came out of it. So
Thank you.
imagine that.
That is wonderful to hear.
And that was last year. So
Wow.
here we are a whole year later. We've done a full year of episodes and had guests in. And property taxes is on everybody's mind now.
Yes,
So
indeed.
we've got a whole hit list for you.
And I'm excited. And for the viewing public, I have not seen the questions. So, yeah, we'll see how this goes.
Yay! So, of course, a lot of these come from people who have watched some of our episodes
Great.
or had questions or incidences that have come up in the course of a year. And we want to get your professional intake on all of this stuff.
Well, I am happy to be here.
We'll start easy because it's like March, almost the end of March.
Right.
And there's a deadline fast approaching. So why don't we give a reminder to our people?
I bet I know what you're going to ask about.
Yeah,
Is it the Board of Revision?
that's it.
Okay, everybody. So and you're probably wondering how to file.
Yes.
Okay, so in the state of Ohio, property owners are entitled to file appeals on their property's value. So generally speaking, if a property owner feels that his or her property is valued too high, the owner can appeal the value to the local county board of revision. And the board of revision is made up of 3 elected officials: the county treasurer, the county auditor, and the chair of the county commission. In the state of Ohio, in Montgomery County, in a large county, it's usually not the elected officials who are actually sitting on there. We have fiduciaries do that for us, and they do a great job. But, Tammy, as you mentioned, the deadline is fast approaching.
Right.
The window to file an appeal in Montgomery County, I'm assuming it's probably everywhere else, would be the last day of March. Now, I think last year it was like the first day of April or
Yeah, it
something
was
like
something
that.
weird.
Yes, I think because the calendar, I don't know if the calendar, there was something with the calendar, I don't know.
Last year was a leap year.
Oh, well, that would
So that
explain
must
it.
have been-
Yes.
I don't know why that gives you an extra day when there's already an extra day, but
Right.
we'll go with it.
Yes, go figure. So, yes, so that process is, the end is quickly approaching to file an appeal. And I would highly encourage, especially anybody in Montgomery County, if you are interested in filing an appeal with the Board of Revision. First of all, it's free to do. It's open
Right.
to anybody. We don't charge a fee for you to come exercise your right to appeal the value of your property. But please go on and look at the Montgomery County Auditor's website for the Board of Revision. And he has a very good kind of explainer video about what you may need to be successful. Because anybody can do it. You can just say, hi, I disagree. But is that really the most effective argument?
Right.
No. The most effective tools you can bring as a property owner to have a favorable outcome, obviously, is an appraisal of your property and or comps, which you as a realtor know all about that, and showing kind of like what homes may have bought and sold for around or of a like type. But, just coming to the Board of Revision and saying, I disagree with my property's value because my neighbor's is lower, is not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah. And that window of opportunity starts with January 1st and runs till usually the end of March, as we
Correct.
said. And a lot of people kind of get lost in that time period because they haven't received their new tax bills yet. So maybe they don't know what increase has been limited, right? Until obviously February taxes are due, and now they're saying, oh crap, what do I need to do? So sometimes that's an under the gun feeling from people that I've
Yes.
talked with, is that
Yes.
they see that tax bill and now I need, how am I gonna get an appraiser in here? But a realtor is able to help you. There are things that we can do to help with that process, and it's just a matter of filing that form with the county
Yes.
by that deadline, and then it takes a period of time to have the hearing scheduled and go through the due process.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, you need to get your complaint, if you will, in
Right.
by the deadline, and that's a very good point. I mean, you will have time to get what you need to get, and you will receive notifications from the from the county auditor, because I believe he's actually secretary of the board, and so you'll receive communications informing you as the property owner of when your hearing will be set. And in Montgomery County, I don't know about all the other counties, but we are still in the Zoom model
Yay.
mode. Yeah. And which a lot of people actually really like. I mean, you
Right.
have folks from out of state who may appeal. You have, maybe the elderly or people with disabilities who have found Zoom to be really helpful. And just everyday citizens
Sure.
have really liked the Zoom option.
Can't take off from work. This is easy for me to schedule
Right.
for lunch. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you, to read the rules.
Right.
You can have people there with you. You can have an attorney if you want. Some people do choose to do that. Most people don't. But go on there, read the rules, see what you really need to have with you to be as successful as possible. And I encourage anybody to do it. And I will say we've had far less appeals filed both this year and last year than I would have expected.
Right. Especially with the increases that we saw.
Yes.
That's where I think people were just kind of like set to be doomed by the amount.
Right.
And they just want to complain about it. But there are things that you can do. And
Absolutely.
there are people who actually win in the
Yes.
dispute to say they get that lowered, and that's an adjustment
Most.
that works for them. So,
That's right. Most do.
yeah.
If you can show a good, valid reason to a board of revision as to why your property value should be lower, and it's there on paper, I think that's a perfectly reasonable, request, and that's usually reflected, I would say. Although, I always like to say, I am an attorney, but I'm not your attorney, everybody. So this is not legal advice. This is just information. But yes, please go on the County Auditor's website, whether you're in Montgomery County or not. The Montgomery County Auditor has incredible resources available on his page to show you what you can use to be most successful in front of a board of revision.
Sure. Absolutely.
So can we go over some of the timeline? Because I know that you pay property taxes a year behind, right?
Correct.
So that wouldn't change your amounts for this year. It would change your amounts for next year if you were successful.
Well, it depends.
On when you actually write the check is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it depends. So in Ohio, we bill 1 year in arrears. We bill 1 year in arrears. Correct. So this year you're paying last year's value, or this year you're paying last year's taxes. So that's important. But the timelines can get kind of interesting. I mean, there are even situations where there is a value change, and we see this quite often,
Right.
where there is a value change, and then there may be a retroactive refund due. So it may not only apply to your current and future obligations, but it may even have an effect on your past balances owed. So one of the things you'll want to do, if you get the notification of a change in value, then you can follow up with the county auditor and say, hey, is this a situation where I may be entitled to a refund? That's an important question too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, when someone's buying a home, there's the opportunity, at least in Montgomery County on our standard real estate contract, to have a long proration or a short proration. One of the favorite
Yeah.
topics of everybody is what's the difference, and it's
Yeah.
just whether or not you're getting a credit as the buyer for a longer period of time that the prior seller owned the property before you're taking possession, but you're getting that paper credit versus a shorter time period. And people always get confused by that. And we have those cash deals that will take place, and invariably a seller will walk away hearing the words that they don't have any more tax bills to pay. And
Right.
of course, they're closing in January, and February's mail comes and they get this tax bill, and they always call
Yes.
frantic, upset. What do you mean I don't owe this money? And they're like, that was taken care of. We sent it out. The title company paid it. And
Yes.
just some of the fun things that happen in real estate.
And I will say, too, as county treasurer, one thing I have appreciated the most is seeing just how knowledgeable our local realtors and title agents are in whether it be, as you just mentioned, proration, or even like county operations. It's amazing. A relative was recently purchasing a property, and I was listening to the title agent explain all the different transactions that happen between the county offices when it comes to financial obligations, documents that need to be filed, and I thought, my gosh,
It's a lot.
this is really, and the title professional was so accurate and on the money,
Yeah.
and I thought this is really impressive.
That was good, right?
Yes,
Instead of
it
going in
really
there and it was
was.
like, what is this failure
I
happening,
know,
right?
because I didn't say, "Hey, I'm a county treasurer. I'm keeping tabs on what you're saying." I just sat there silently, and everything she said was accurate, and it was very detailed, and it was very impressive.
We like it when we pass those tests.
Yes. That's right.
Awesome. Well, I know one of the other things that we have, of course, we've been having a lot of wind episodes taking place, not even necessarily talking about just tornadoes, but
Yes.
wind damage and things like that. So this was something that I was surprised to learn too late, was that there is a process that if your home suffers damage from
Yes.
something like that, that there you can file with the county and maybe
Yes.
get your taxes lowered or waived, or tell me about that.
Absolutely. So there is a form, and I don't have the exact the number of the form, but is the damage. It's a damaged property form essentially, and that is, you can find that with the county auditor's office. You can pull that form, and then attest, essentially document that your home may have been destroyed, or not destroyed, well, partially, or had something that affected the value of the home that caused damage. I say destroyed because it instantly brought back memories of the situation with the tornadoes.
In 2019.
Right,
Yeah.
where people were like, "Oh my gosh, what do you mean I have to pay property taxes? I don't have a house anymore."
Right.
And but yes, to answer your question, Tammy, there is a form with the county auditor, and every county auditor has that form, where you as the homeowner, if you've had a wind occurrence or fire or a tree's fallen through or something, you can fill out that form, submit it to the county, and as you stated, there may be some type of tax value implication there, and that's really important because you just mentioned I found out about it too late. So that is the case with so many
Right.
tools and resources available in every level of local government. There are just so many people that don't know the
Right.
programs that they can take advantage of. I cannot tell you the amount of times where I tell people, "Hey, folks, you're of a certain income, you're of a certain age, you may be entitled to homestead." Come to find out, they've been paying way
Yeah.
more property tax than they had to pay for years.
Right.
Or they didn't have their owner occupancy tax credit, which they are entitled to by law because maybe it was a paper transaction involving cash and didn't have title agents and realtors. So your question is a very good one. Take time to visit your local county auditor's website, county treasurer's website, county recorder's website. Find out the tools, the programs and resources that you have available to you as a property owner. Take an hour or two and find them out, because in the long run it may save you a lot of money.
And I'll say that, I've had incidences where I've called down to the county office, and the people that you talk with are very friendly. They're very helpful. If it might not be the person that you're talking to directly, they can get you in contact with those people that are the right connections. And sometimes it's intimidating to think, well, I got to go on this website and find all this stuff. So
Yes.
sometimes a phone call is easier for people to do. And I always try to tell people, just call the county, because that's their job. They're there to help
Yes.
us. And they're going to help you if there is an answer or maybe a better way for these things to be done. And like you said, all the different services that we have opportunity for is really a benefit for why we are in our county that we're in.
Amen.
Not all the counties have all of the benefits that Montgomery County has.
Yes.
You hear a lot about higher tax rates in Montgomery County, so what is the difference in our tax rates versus some of the other counties? And if you're getting services that equal maybe that benefit, it's just wise for people to be able to have that as an answer and understanding.
So well said. So well said. And that is a whole nother topic about tax rates from county to county. But what you said is right. I mean, in so many different levels. I can't tell you, there are 88 county treasurers. There are 88 counties. The degree to which so many other counties, to your point, Tammy, have so much less technology. They're smaller counties. They can't afford some of the technological offerings out there that make jobs easier.
Right.
the average citizen, not just the local government, the average citizen has so much information here in Montgomery County at their fingertips. It really makes this quite easy. So, as you said, call, look online, visit us. But if it's the treasurer, auditor, recorder, those need to be your first 3 stops.
Right, for sure.
Yes.
Well, you did kind of talk on the next question topic that we had, which is
Yes.
homestead exemption.
Yes.
And talking about that, who actually qualifies for a homestead exemption? And I know that this is probably one of those things within the property tax conversation that we'll have that is subject to change. But currently, what we have as a benefit is when you are a certain age, living in an owner-occupied, if you have military disability benefits. So can you kind of dive into that for us, please?
Of course. And this is an area that changes quite frequently. And I will paraphrase by saying that homestead is a county auditor function more than it is a treasurer. So hopefully I'm getting everything right here.
So we're testing you.
Yes, indeed. But there are multiple components as to who may qualify for homestead. Those generally fall into the buckets of age, disability, and one other status, which is very sad, is the surviving spouse of a first responder killed in the line of duty.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. But when it comes to age, that age limit is 65. And when it comes to income, and this is an important distinction, when it comes to income, I believe this year the annual combined income, household income, I think is $40,000.
Okay.
That's the limit. A lot of folks are under the assumption that Social Security counts towards that $40,000 limit.
Okay.
It doesn't always. And I say doesn't always because there are some times at certain levels where I've seen it where it has, but not always. So you really want to make sure to call your local county auditor, fill out the homestead application, ask them if you may qualify, because you may very well. And again, a lot of people are under the assumption, oh, I have all the Social Security coming in, I don't meet eligibility, when they very well may be mistaken, because that's kind of the pervasive, oh, I make too much
Right.
because I'm retired or something of that nature. So you want to contact your county and see if you may qualify. But generally speaking, homestead is there for people over a certain age and under a certain income. But that income requirement is different when it comes to someone with a certain level of disability.
Okay.
So that's something else. If you may be living with a permanent and total disability, there's a different kind of income criteria there that may or may not apply. So it can get kind of complicated, but you really want to make sure if you think you may qualify for homestead, the place to call is the county auditor, and they can try and get you enrolled in that. One thing I will say about homestead, so back in the day, there was no income requirement. There was no income, should I say, limit. Anyone who was at a certain age qualified for homestead. In my opinion, that's the way it should be. But when they did that, I think they saw so much revenue going out the door, they put the income ceiling there. And homestead right now is of great interest to the state legislature. They are trying to tweak it to make more people qualify for homestead. But that's a whole nother conversation in terms of legislative issues dealing with property taxes. But homestead is one of the most effective tools out there for individuals who may be looking to lower their property tax obligation.
And just as a generalized rule, I think it's a certain dollar amount that's basically taken off of that value before the assessment of the taxes, is that
Yes,
correct?
it shields a portion of your property essentially from property taxes.
Right.
So I was with the county auditor recently, and we were doing a presentation, and I think he said about on average, I can't remember the value of the home, but he was mentioning about it was worth maybe $500 or $600 in most cases, something like that. But a lot of people, that is a very significant amount of money for
sure.
a lot of people.
Yeah.
And but it's worth more for some, less for others.
Right.
And not to mention too, and property taxes, the criteria, the information that goes into to valuation and everything else is so complex. But essentially what has happened, I think it was last year, was for various reasons, I can't even recall the exact reasons, but we saw the value of one's homestead benefit go down.
Right.
Which was really sad in a lot of cases. But that was, again, something outside the county's control.
And that's one of the things that when someone, again, is looking to buy a property, first of all, when we're looking at putting together their dollar amount for a financial understanding, is this a good fit? We have to determine, is the taxes that are being reflected, is that already a homestead exemption, which you may not qualify for, so you have to know that you have to factor higher. Or in another case, that they're coming in thinking, well, I should qualify for homestead exemption, so when does that lower my taxes? And it's like, it's always surprising for people to know that there is a little bit of a lag time, there is a delay, which again is why, as your realtor, we want to get the benefit of getting a long proration for you so that you get a little bit of a credit cushion you, and then you
Yes.
have, that time to get it caught up and get on the record for what you need to or can qualify for.
Well said.
But that's one of the things, and if I understand correctly, they have to live in the home like this year, 2025, then come January, they could file for that homestead exemption, which of course is gonna take effect for the next coming cycle. and
Right.
There's always that delay.
Yes, there are certain residency requirements, and as should be the case.
Right.
With any type of particular government benefit, there should be qualifications that one has to meet rather than just automatically qualifying for it, in my opinion. Everyone should have to kind of meet whatever threshold is reasonable. So, but yes, please, if you are of a certain age and you feel you may qualify, or you have a disability, or you feel you may qualify based on income or any other reason, please look up homestead, contact your county auditor, and that auditor's office can help facilitate the filling out of the application, and then the vetting, if you will. They determine. And one thing that's interesting too, and I know this kind of inside baseball, you may not be interested, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're
Yeah.
interested.
Okay. Perfect. Well, in every county, a lot of people assume that it is the county treasurer who has everything to do with taxes. Wrong. And what I like about the system in Ohio is there's a really good separation of duties. It is the county auditor who tells the county treasurer, based on a number of different factors, what the taxable amount is to be on each individual parcel. That amount is then certified to the tax roll. The county treasurer must then collect the amount certified to the roll per parcel. So then the treasurer collects. So it's really interesting, and you look at various models. One thing I like to do, I like to look at different local government models all across the country. And I love Ohio's model when it comes to this, because different responsibilities fall within different offices, and it's a great system of check and balance and separation of duties. Sometimes I can get kind of, maybe get kind of frustrating for property owners, or they may assume everything is in this office, or maybe everything's in
Sure.
that office, or they think, and we kind of have to, send them back and forth. But it's a great way to ensure, in my opinion, that that things are being done properly, and people are holding each other accountable, and you have multiple layers of review. So that's important too.
Sure.
Is if you're a property owner, that's why I said recorder, treasurer, auditor, because each office does something a little bit different, and each office has a tool or a program that may be of use to you as a property owner.
So one of our future episodes needs to be where we have the auditor, the
Yes.
recorder, and you in the hot seats.
Oh, I would love that.
Then
I
we can
would
ask
love
all
that.
questions and see
Yes.
who, okay, you take
Yes.
it, it's your turn.
That
So
would be
before
perfect.
before we
Yes.
move on topics, I've got two questions about
Yes.
homestead. The first one is, once you get it,
Mm-hmm.
is it for the life of the property, or do you have to reapply every year?
Recently, I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, county auditor sent out a lot of pieces of mail to those who had the benefit, basically asking them to not recertify, that's the wrong word, but just to reconfirm you know, that they were in the home, et cetera, that nothing had changed. So compliance with that really is up to the county auditor. And as Tammy mentioned, you know, once a property changes hands, it's important to know, oh, is that benefit supposed to still be there or not? One of the things that you see, the troubling that I see, and to your question, Ellie, is a property may have been given the homestead benefit. Maybe the person who originally qualified for the benefit maybe doesn't live there anymore. And maybe the kids just kind of inherited the home, but not really an inheritance on paper.
Right.
The kids are just living there, and the person who may have qualified either sadly passed away or maybe moved in with somebody else. And so there is a compliance piece with homestead, and that, again, that falls to the county auditor. But no, it's by no means you know, a situation where once that parcel is granted homestead, it's just kind of there in perpetuity. It is granted based upon the conditions on the ground, and that's just an important thing to remember. So, good question.
Okay, and we also talked about how those qualifications have changed over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Who changes that? Is that by county? Is that state legislature? Who decides you get it, and who should we contact if we feel that it should be changed so that we could get it?
The Ohio legislature.
Okay.
Yes.
So is this your House of Representatives and Senators?
That's correct. That's correct. And I was just talking with another local elected official before this meeting, and I was talking about how we're seeing all this activity with property taxes in Columbus, in part because many of the all across Ohio, many of the school districts are at something, they're hitting something called the 20 mil floor, which basically takes away a lot of the wiggle room, so to speak, when values are increased to where the value and the taxable obligation may be, you kind of have some wiggle room, where local counties have some wiggle room to make things a little bit less impactful, if you will, on people's pocketbooks. A lot of these school districts are hitting that 20 mil floor, and people are seeing their values increase, or their taxable amounts increase exponentially. Montgomery County is fortunate. We only have 3 school districts, I think it's 3, who have hit that 20 mil floor, whereas a lot of the state, they're already there.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. And so that's why, in part, you're seeing so much activity with the legislature to amend property tax provisions, because people are just over it. And I don't blame them. You know, when you have a situation, there are states out there where you have situations where you can predict, as a homeowner, when you purchase the home, you know, what your tax obligations may be at a certain point in time. In Ohio, you really don't have that.
Right.
I mean, who knows what they're going to be in 20,
Right.
25, 30 years. And I will tell you, if Ohio doesn't get its property tax issue under control, in my opinion, I think the citizens will put something on the ballot, similar to what we've seen in California, saying, Ohio legislature, you didn't move fast enough, so now we, the citizens, are going to take care of it. Then that's going to be a whole nother issue. So I'm personally, I am proud of the legislature for looking at this issue, taking it very seriously, filing a lot of bills. I know the legislature put forward, like I mentioned last year, a joint committee to look at these things. Bills are being filed today on property taxes. And so I truly have my fingers crossed, and I am hopeful that we will continue to see movement on this issue, because it's reached that point.
Well, and that's we've done very well with segueing into the next line of questioning and
good.
everything, because
Yes.
as you mentioned, last year we did talk about that. At the time, I think there were 12 different bills sitting in the House, and from different counties of our state, everybody had kind of said, well, this is what we need to address, this is what we need to address. And so, of course, when the people in the House are sitting there looking at it, well, we can't solidify everybody. So
Right.
that brings to question, is it going to be done on a county-by-county basis, or is it going to be as a statewide mandate, this is how our property taxes are going to be addressed?
State.
Because we hear, you know, where some of these other states have come in and said, we're doing away with property taxes. Like, we need to give a break to our citizens of our state, and when they buy a house, there's a transaction fee, there's a tax that's assessed. This is what we're gonna have to go off of.
Yes.
And I think you gave us really good information the last time, talking
Yes.
about that 20 mil floor,
Mhm.
and how the levies kind of affect these things in
Yes.
different ways that our school systems, our road services, county services, things like that, that also tie into that. The property tax isn't just this one little bucket. It kind
Right.
of filters out to all of these different benefits, right?
Hugely so.
So you can't say we can get rid of it, as much as we may like that,
Right.
but the people are feeling the pinch, and so somewhere,
Yes.
somehow, it's gotta give, and how can we make that happen?
That is a great question. So think about this too. Here's what's interesting from a political, not a more government
Right.
perspective. The current legislature that we are in now is very different from the one that we were in when I was here last. When I was here last, you had a divided majority caucus. The Senate president and the House Speaker were not on speaking terms. Now is an entirely different situation, where and because of that situation, which was dysfunctional, you didn't really have legislation
Right,
moving hardly
right.
at all. Now we are in a very different situation where you have a lot more amicability, I think that's a word, and to where there is so much happening.
Right.
So we were speaking with our lobbyist, and he said, "Hey, this is an entirely different situation here. Now we're having to just really, keep pace of everything that is being filed." But based on what I am hearing when it comes to property taxes, there are basically two camps in Columbus. Are the reforms going to be targeted to the segment of the population that needs that benefit the most, whatever that definition is? I'm assuming that's income. Or does it need to be much more broad to apply to more people other than simply those who may financially need it the most? Because if you target it to a segment of the population who may need it the most, to your point, of course that's going to transfer a greater burden
Right.
to everyone who may be deemed able to pay.
Right.
And we've seen that for decades with
Yep.
tax policy in this country, and I'm sure in many others. So that's a situation that people are looking at right now. Another thing that's interesting, and I'm also a former school board member, there was a comment out of the legislature not that long ago where they stated, okay, well, yes, we're going to do property tax reform, but that means we're going to have to fix the school funding
Right.
formula issue. That has been an issue for, I think, since the 90s.
Right.
So, to your point, if you move one lever, you better be prepared to look at all the other levers that are affected.
Right.
And property tax, the property tax provisions, the provisions on the books that govern property tax collection and valuation, things of that nature, have indeed been tweaked many times over the years. So, I think people are of this opinion of, do I throw the proverbial baby out with the bathwater, or do I just dress the baby up differently?
Right. Right.
And but in the meantime, bills are being filed.
Right.
So it's a really interesting time to be alive if you are interested in property tax law, which I very much am, and it's a really interesting thing to watch in Columbus, because it is a topic that will not go away, and I am glad that it is not going away.
Right.
I'm glad.
And I think, that again, we hear so much now talking about efficiency, accountability with budgets, and maybe
Mhm.
it's line item budgets that we need to be looking at, because
Right.
you can't just say, well, this is the total number that I need, and just let me do what all I need. Well, that sounds good, right?
Right.
But wait until you start asking for more money because weren't able to cover it. And then, well, why weren't you able to cover it? What did you get accomplished? And
Yes.
so those things all come to mind when we start hearing about the property tax conversation.
Absolutely.
Because again, I realize how much goes into that and how that really is a benefit in so many ways. We know some of our higher taxed communities have better school systems,
Yes.
as a easy thing to say. So are you willing to give up some of that in order
Right.
to lower your taxes? And are you realizing, then you have the people who are like, well, I don't have any kids in school anymore, so it doesn't matter to me. Well, that's an easy fix for you, but not for the other 6 families on the same street. There is not
that's
a one
right.
way to approach it,
There's not.
which is why it's easy to say it didn't get accomplished before when we had that dysfunction going on. But
Yes.
now, what's the best way to approach it? And that's where I think minds of the schooled people and people who understand what all goes into it,
Yes.
you know, that more knowledgeable about the process, see that there's a bigger than just one answer to this.
Yes.
How do we get that to be addressed appropriately at the state level, who may not be seeing all of the different aspects that we are?
And why your point is so important is because I mentioned earlier the California model, you know, where the citizens just said, we're done waiting on the legislature to fix it. We're just going to put something on the ballot, and then it passes. What happens if that does happen?
Right.
Well, will all of the considerations you just mentioned be taken into account? No, they won't. But will something pass and then become law? Probably. So it is so complicated, and we haven't even gotten into the historical, the reduction in funding to local governments from the state, then shifting requirements elsewhere. But then you could point to the local budgets that have come out from Columbus where they've funded more of public education.
Right.
But then you talk about the vouchers. And so, where is the money coming from? Where is it going? School districts need to know this, cities, town, everybody wants to know. And I think and this is what we're seeing, I think nationally, if I may say so, this is where it gets into the situation of, okay, if property taxes are going to be lower from some tweak in Columbus, does that mean we're going to shift the financial burden somewhere else? Or does it mean we're just going to have to cut, period? You look at states where they may have a no state income tax. Well, guess what? They have a much higher sales tax.
Right.
So it may look great to people saying, oh, congrats, you don't have an income tax. Well, guess what? You're paying almost 10% in some states for what you may want to go buy. So have fun when you go buying a car. Tax policy is so complicated, and to your point, Tammy, not only does there need to be kind of an expert review, but a historical review as well.
Right.
What has come before? What changes may have been proposed? What have we looked at? And so I think the state and the legislators, hats off to them. They have a real challenge in front of them. But again, I am very thankful that they are taking this issue seriously and,
Right.
and filing bills and really talking this through.
Right, because you could easily talk about having a sliding scale and all of the different factors. You plug yourself in and it does the mathematical equation in the background and come up with the number. But how are you actually able to budget as a municipality based off of that? And then
Right.
if you find, well, I don't like that number, so if I go to the adjoining county and my number is different, maybe I go there. But we are starting to see, and people always have that conversation when they're looking to purchase, what are the property taxes? So
Yes.
I interestingly had an older couple who were looking to move from one adjacent county, and what they were looking for in a condo home and single floor living, that type of thing for their aging in place. That requirement for their condo that we looked at in a different county, and then brought them to the exact same condo living, only 3 years newer, slightly lower price point, better updates, but the property taxes were higher. And I literally could not get them to see that the financial difference for the benefit of what they would be getting in Montgomery County was still better than buying the lower taxes, because all they saw was the
Right.
tax bill. And so that's a hard conversation. Ultimately, it's not my decision. I can just give you information, give you the facts, and ultimately it's up to the consumer to make that decision. But then you want to say, but do you know that we also have these benefits? Do you know that we
Right.
don't? And
Yes.
it's like, you can't go that hard sell on it, right?
You can't.
But there are so many factors that are really into that property tax model.
Yes.
Nobody gets it.
And maybe that was by design, for all we know. It is an incredibly complicated process, and not to mention the property taxation in Ohio, is also constitutional. This is written into the original Constitution of the state of Ohio. And so that's a whole nother factor. But it is an issue that I think demands to be not just looked at, but addressed in a meaningful way. And it's going to be interesting to see how that works. There are so many really interesting ideas. I read one the other day, something that's being proposed about similar to some type of opportunity zone, except it's a lower tax zone. Well, to your point, what is the person on the other end of that line supposed to think when a zone gets dropped, saying, "Oh, you got lower property taxes in this zone"? What's the person on the other end of the line supposed to think?
Yeah.
And for how long? And to your point about budgeting, for how long is that supposed to does that apply to new construction, or does it apply to just existing properties?
That's what I think. I think
Right.
that there should be different people that the financial burden relies on. So like an idea that I thought up is, why not at every new construction they owe a specific dollar amount or a percentage straight to the school as a one-time bill. That because I think one of the problems you're seeing right now, especially in this area, is they're just building neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood, and the schools are just getting dumped on, and they're brand new schools that are only 5 years old, but they're already in trailers. So now you're
Right.
having to build another one, and that the taxpayers are like not passing any more levies. No, we're already at the top of our
We're
price
done.
point.
Yeah.
I'll give you a whammy. You talked about maybe a one for new construction, a one-time fee owed to the school district. Take property tax abatements, the law for abatements into consideration. The rule there was, or the thought there was, you want to relocate a business, or you want to build something that may ordinarily be paying property taxes. All you got to do is go to the local city council in the school district, and they'll say, "Congrats! If you want to locate here, you don't have to pay any property taxes, not just for a one time, but for up to 30 years."
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And what happens? That means it's shifted to those who do pay their property
Right.
taxes, i.e., residential homeowners.
Right.
And so there have been so many alterations, so shall we say.
But I also think in that shift, it just needs to be cut as well. That there's a lot of wasteful spending. I mean, we're seeing it on a federal level, all the way down to local, but we don't have the Doge on the local level.
Right.
That's coming out and saying,
Yes.
If what we see on the grand scale actually comes down to the lower levels,
Uh-huh.
then maybe you do see something like that. I think because what I think is beneficial from that is that people are now having a better understanding about, oh, wait a minute, that's why that makes a difference. And maybe I should be asking, what is all of my taxes going to? What are the
Yes.
benefits of my property taxes, so that I can understand I don't mind paying a higher rate if I'm getting the
Correct.
benefit. But if I'm not getting the benefit, then maybe I don't need to live in the highest ranking school system. I mean,
Yep.
legitimately, right?
Yep. And I will say this, as a former school board member, the answer to one's problems is not always more money. Half the time, it's merely about effectively managing the financial resources you're already fortunate enough to have.
Sure.
And so I like your point, Ellie. I agree. It's but I wish more would look and say, is this proposed increase really necessary? Really, truly necessary? Maybe it is. That's not my job anymore. My job is to collect the revenue. But at one time, it was my job as a school board member. But there are a lot of taxing jurisdictions in counties across the state, and it's their job to look at that and make a determination. And then it's up to the people to make a determination. And the answer in some cases may very well be. And two, by the way, I may mention, I promised I wouldn't go long. We're at 43 minutes. But one of the things is even levy reform. So I think one of the bills that's getting some legs up in Columbus is kicking out, if you will, I think it's replacement levies. Not renewals, but replacement levies. Because even with levies, you can get kind of creative.
Right.
And do people always know what they're voting on? I think one of the best bills that was ever passed, and I think it was our local state rep, Tom Young, I think it was his bill, was putting the ballot language in front of the voter when it comes time to vote on the levies, saying per $100,000 value of a home, This is how much
This is
you
your
as the voter.
impact, right.
That's right. Because before that, who
You
knows?
had no idea.
No.
You just, yay or nay, and if you say yes, it's really
Right.
no.
No wonder if they all passed.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. You don't tell people how much they're paying.
Right.
So I think that was one of the best bills that ever passed. That is a great example of effective legislation. Simple and to the point and effective.
So what are some of the pending legislation at the state right now?
So many. There are so many. I think one that was filed today, which is really interesting, was, and this has been talked about, it will give county auditors, not the state tax commissioner, the final say in what the value of real property is to be in the county auditor's county. So right now, the county auditor is required in every county to do reappraisals every 3 years. You have the triennial and you have the sexennial. One's a market update, one's a one-by-one examination of the property. Right now, especially we saw this with the market update that just happened, the triennial, county auditors, submit to the state what the proposed, market update is to be in each, quote unquote neighborhood, and the state tax commissioner, who is not elected, can either say yes, we agree with your conclusion, or no, it should be a lot higher. And guess what happened? The latter. This last time was the tax commissioner was saying, no, it needs to come up. We think it needs to be more. So the legislature, a bill that was just filed today, I believe it was saying it needs to be the opposite. It is the locally elected official, in this case the county auditor, who knows their community best.
Right.
And so give the final determination to the county auditor, not the state tax commissioner.
That makes sense because you have, I'm assuming the state tax commissioner in Franklin County, which is a more higher cost of living, considering, like Pike County, that's a lot lower.
Right. Right. I agree. I tend to be in favor of the bill. The only pushback I've heard that makes sense would be, what happens if it's an election year and the county auditor may say, you know what? 0% is the increase. 0%.
Well, I think it just needs to not be on an election year.
Well, that too. That too. Things change in an election year, but it's so that's the only pushback I've seen is, ooh, does the determination of the state tax commissioner at least put it in the hands of, as the law would call, a neutral and detached magistrate, if you will, versus an elected official. So again, there you put those two arguments in front of a legislator. What are they supposed to think?
Right.
Because I used to be a lobbyist. You can think about the best case scenario, but oftentimes it's just as important to think about the worst case scenario.
Right.
What is the worst case scenario that you see if this bill were to pass? And sometimes that's a pretty scary proposition. But that's a situation where I could say, oh gosh, and then you have someone in one county saying in another county they raised it 0%.
Right.
Whereas in another county, the county auditors may say, I'm doing my job, and my job, in my opinion, it's a 10% increase based on the sales we just had in the past year. And then what? And then what?
Well, and the problem comes then when you have an adjoining county who has a lower tax basis, that people say, I can cross that line, I can go over
Yes.
there, let me sell and move over there, and my business, my retail sales, everything that is
Yes.
transitioned there, it's not just the property tax that you lose, there are other tax bases that are impacted by this.
Yes.
And so I liken this to, you customer service, and you have a cell phone service, and you've been with them for 12 years, and suddenly a new plan comes out with a competitor, and they're gonna give you all of the bells and whistles and everything. Well, maybe it's not as good as quality service, maybe it's just unreliable somewhere, but hey, for that difference, I'm gonna do it. So you contact your current provider and say, can you give me some savings here? Can you
Right.
make something a little better for me so I don't have to change? Because I
Right.
really like what I'm used to.
Yes.
Nope, we can't do that. We only offer a new plan to somebody who's never had our service. So an existing customer doesn't get it, but a new customer gets it. So I could go over here, flip-flop, and then I could come back. I mean, nobody likes that feeling that your
No.
current customer base isn't as valuable as maybe somebody new coming to the area.
Right.
So I think that's where the customer service aspect of things.
Yes.
We want to keep the people who want to be in our communities so that they
Yes.
have the feeling of community, right?
Yes.
They belong, they want to contribute to it. They're paying the residual into everything that goes on and supporting those things, instead of this influx where they just go away because they're looking to save the money. Because it ultimately
Yes.
comes down to, I just need to save some money.
I need to save money. And not to mention, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, Tammy, I have had an increase lately, and I've been thinking about this. I was thinking about this the other day. I've had multiple people in the last probably 3 or 4 months tell me, I moved to, I'm not going to say which county, but I moved to an adjoining county because they had lower property taxes. But they have gotten so out of control lately, I'm kind of thinking about moving back to Montgomery County.
Yep.
Because the taxes there are now lower and I get more for my money. So things change.
Right. Just because the property taxes are lower there now, doesn't mean they're gonna stay that
No.
way, and I don't think we're all on the same
We are not on the same cycle.
So that's the big difference, and so I was
That
like,
too.
well, you don't know what it's gonna be next year or 2
You
years
don't.
from now, and the money you sold, made, cost in order to do that, now you gotta do it again.
Yes.
You haven't saved yourself any money there in moving those
No.
times, right?
Correct.
So it is 2025.
Yes.
And AI is becoming more and more popular.
Yes.
So is there any proposals with that, with tax evaluations, or are they already using some of that?
Interesting. I have heard a little bit about it. So in Ohio law, auditors are charged with obviously the revaluation of properties, and especially in large counties, this is a situation where you hire on a vendor who is doing extensive work, driving by, so in some cases flying planes over, and that's really important. Obviously, every 6 years, but every 3 years, to your point, you have that market value update where it's just looking at some factors like sales and
data.
things, the data. So are these tools being used now? I'd be shocked if they weren't.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if they weren't. It's just so prevalent now, and in many ways, I think that hopefully is a good thing. Maybe it leads to certain efficiencies, but just generally, like, I know this is not the topic of the podcast at all, but like AI, it is. I think it's a great tool, but it needs human oversight, certainly.
For sure.
And even in your business, like some of the stuff I've heard about, like with automated determinations of whether or not someone is going to be given a loan or not without any human review,
Yeah, no.
can have some really scary impacts.
Well, the
Yeah.
bias can be
Yeah.
built in there, and that's the
Bingo.
problem. You
Yeah.
have to have the human interaction in that in order
Yes.
to qualify
Yes.
somebody. You can't just do it by computer. There
Well
are other
said.
factors, so.
Well said. Yes.
We won't be replaced by AI.
No.
Fortunately.
No. You can't elect an AI chatbot. You have to elect a human being as county treasurer, and I like that.
Some job security, right?
Indeed,
Next.
indeed.
Yeah.
Anything else, or have we covered the list?
I mean, the last thing on here, and we talked about this before, and
Yes.
again, this is that panel discussion. We'll
Yes.
get the third party
Oh,
in here,
good.
right?
Yes.
But we had an incident that we talked about with deed fraud,
Yes.
and you gave us great information, and of course, our recorder's office has a great program
The
with
best.
the fraud alert system and everything.
Yes.
So the only follow-up that we
Please.
would like to submit for consideration
Yes.
is when you're around that water cooler having a discussion.
All
and
the
saying,
time.
oh, yeah. The fraud alert is a great program, but it seems to be an after effect.
Of course.
So now that there has been something that's been recorded after with a deed transfer, right?
Got great news
Now
for you.
you've got something that's happening. We're asking, why can't that be like a deed freeze? Like
Like
you
a
have
credit
loss.
freeze.
I have such great news for you.
Yay!
So to your point, last time how I talked about this was, and Tammy, to your question, is the fraud alert notification system, an incredible program that not every county has. You're right; it was filed after a document was recorded on your property, with what was coming before. Who knows? So the law that governed how county recorders do their job was basically stating, if a document met certain elements, you take the document. That's your
Right.
job as the county recorder. Well, the previous county recorder, Stacy Benson Taylor, and the current county recorder, the new one, Lori Kennedy, who has kept Stacy's plans in place and even come up with a few new ones of her own, they have done a great job. I just got an update last week where they are taking IDs for certain transactions, and they have put some other security measures in place to try and prevent some of this fraudulent activity. And this county started doing things like taking IDs even to try and catch issues before they happened, before any other county in the state. Montgomery County was the only one doing it. And in government, that's often scary because you don't want to be the first one to do something because you want to make sure it's okay. But it was, and it is. And I am very proud of the recorder's office for what they're doing to fight that deed fraud. So absolutely sign up for the fraud alert notification system. Please do it. It's free. It's on the county recorder's website. But also know that based on especially the number of issues in Montgomery County, there have been some safeguards put into place to try and catch some of these issues before they arise.
So is it when only a certain type of document is filed, or if you are signed up for the fraud alert, they take an ID filed on that property?
Oh, fraud alert is no, two separate things.
Two separate, okay.
Yeah, two separate things. So they're doing great work on the front end, but you're also helping protect yourself if you're signed up for the fraud alert notification system on the back end. Yes, it's so Montgomery County is really a leader in so many different aspects with property records, property taxation, property tools and programs that are in place, like the prepayment program I mentioned last time. These things are maybe being done in these other counties, but Montgomery County does a lot of these things very, very well.
Right.
And so, especially for your listeners who are Montgomery County residents, congratulations. If you're in a surrounding county,
come on over.
Yeah, come on over. There you go. Yes.
Or bring these ideas to your current treasurer
That's
or
right.
auditor.
A recorder. That's right.
Recorder.
That's right. And they may already have some of these kind of in place, but Montgomery County truly is a leader in so many. We have treasurers and recorders and auditors come from other parts of the state to figure out what we do and how we're doing it.
Right.
And from far across the state. And so I think that, to me, has been a testament to
The services you're providing.
in this
for
county.
Sure. Yeah.
That's right. And so I'm really proud of the whole team in the county, Bill.
Well, we think you do an amazing job. Obviously,
you.
we continue to support you
Thank
and love
you.
having you on our show. But
Thank you.
we really enjoy, the open dialogue that we get with Montgomery County specifically.
Thank you.
And tell your buddies to come on down and see us, and we can have
Absolutely.
some fun.
And I love your podcast. And I love the shorts that I see that pop up on my YouTube sometimes. So keep it up. It's a great program.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us today on the Realty Podcast. If you enjoyed the knowledge and entertainment today, please subscribe and share with your friends. We will be embarking on a journey that bridges the gap between realtors and clients, uncovering the heart and tea of real estate.